Well, welcome to the EquiRatings review show here. Leg 3 of the Event Rider Masters in Arville. And my goodness, what a weekend we have enjoyed in Belgium. The first time the series has ever been here. We didn't know what Arville was going to be a little bit like because it's never had a field of this quality, but I think we should probably start with our winner because he was brilliant in all three phases. Chris Burton, Polystar, finish on their dressage score, get the FOD to take the title.
Yeah, incredible across every phase. The dressage performance was better than I expected, or better than the data would have expected. When you're here, we're lucky enough to be sitting right beside the arena. We saw him warming up. Polystar just so imposing,
It's like a supermodel horse.
Yeah, absolutely. Big black horse. Just beautiful. And he was, perfect test. Very accurate in everything that he did. There was no mistakes in there. I'm sure we'll come on to Upsilon and Tom Carlile, but they were very similar tests in terms of accuracy. Polystar just had a little bit of flash, and that, got him that
23.6, which is an incredible score.
Yeah.
And then he backed it up with a beautiful clear round in the show jumping, which actually, he'd picked up time penalties in Wiesbaden that had ended up being pretty expensive for him. There was no chance of that happening here.
In the show jumping round, I think there was a lot of pressure on him in the show jumping actually, and there was some very good show jumpers in the ring who all jumped clear. And not only that, then we had a reasonably high jumping clear rate, certainly early in the field. I actually felt like it was going to be potentially one of those, very high clear rates in which, the show jumping is not potentially as influential. It didn't turn out that way, actually.
I think we had 10 clear rounds.
Yeah, we had 10. It's still in the top 5 in terms of the clear rates at all of the ERM legs over the history of ERM. It doesn't quite reach Barbary 2017, which had the almost 60% clear rate. But it is coming in very close to Chatsworth 2016, which was the very first leg of the Event Rider Masters, in terms of influence. So not massively influential. 10 from 30. What my worry would have been, and certainly what Oliver expressed in the studio when he
Oliver Townend, I think, saw about 5 clear rounds in a row and started to get very twitchy, didn't he?
Yeah, that was actually quite funny, wasn't it? But you can understand why, because with a horse like his, you want them to be able to get their advantage in. I talk about it with Leonidas a little bit, Mark Todd's Leonidas. Every horse has a phase that they're a little bit of, that's their speciality. And show jumping is absolutely Kilnebred and Evo's. So if you see an easier show jumping round, you can understand why they're like, well, that was the one place I would have gotten ahead. He did go in and jump his clear round, Oliver, but on Chris Burton they did as well, and that was, I think, probably the key moment for me, because it set him up for when we talk about specialities. We know Chris Burton specialises in getting different horses to go fast on cross-country tracks.
EquiRatings have long had Chris Burton up as the fastest rider in the world, and for very good reason. And you did a really interesting blog post on him a little while ago as to just why he came about the moniker of the fastest rider in the world cross-country, because he is exceptional. He actually went out on course as the last rider to go, which brings with it an added pressure. And he had time in hand, and he didn't look like he rushed his cross-country round. Bearing in mind, before this weekend, nobody had ever made the time here.
Nobody had ever made the time. Now, I did say that we did expect people to make the time. It was a little bit of an unknown. Polystar would have been one. I think Treason was up there. They actually had very, very similar time penalties at Wiesbaden. So I would have expected both of them. Kilnebred and Evo, he did.
We'll come on to him. That was one of the shocks of the weekend, really. We'll come on to him because that was really quite something out of the ordinary. But Chris Burton, his winning margin was quite exceptional.
Yeah, I think 23.6. He's now finished. I think that, Nicole, is going to be the second best finishing score in Event Rider Masters, with only Tom Carlile at Barbary
last
Upsilon
year.
at Barbary
Yeah.
will be the only one better than him. So I remember when we did the review show with Sam, when we talked about Piggy French and Quarry Crest Echo, I think we've seen another real outstanding performance across 3 phases to go and win this. You know, showed in every phase he excelled.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? You know, the first 2 seasons of the Event Rider Masters, only one person ever won by finishing on their dressage score. That was Alex Watian, Bramham 2016. The 3 legs that we've had in 2018, 2 of them have been won by people finishing on their dressage score. Piggy French at Chatsworth, now Chris Burton here in Arville. Yeah. When you talk about finishing on your dressage score, the FOD, you know, it's very tough to get past.
It's very difficult to achieve. You know, we look at it at Olympic Games, and I know we make it sound easy. Don't add penalties. That's the name of the game. Do your best dressage test and don't add. But I really believe at all levels of eventing, it's probably the dressage remains the biggest influencer at the kind of 1 and 2 star level. Once you get beyond a 1 and 2 star level, any opportunity, like whatever dressage you do, if you can finish on it, you make yourself very competitive. And you'll see that, you know, if you think about a horse that starts, let's say, on a 30, that would have been a 45. If you're finishing on the 30, you're absolutely going into the top echelons of the competition. But you're probably not going to be in the top 10 after the first phase anymore. So for me, the removal of the multiplier is an important part of it, but this was the case long before the removal of the multiplier as well. You know, Sam is the only one, Michael Sam.
The Biesthetique Sam, the Olympic champion.
He's the only one to do it at the Olympic Games.
Your point actually there is very valid, because Laura Collett, London 52, who finished in 2nd. Now, I know you got a little bit overexcited. Mr. Bass the 2nd was mentioned at one point, but he was 18th after dressage on a score of 31. He added very little to that score. He was only 3 seconds over the time in the cross country. So actually, he didn't add much to it, 1.2 penalties in total, and that was good enough to pull him all the way up to 2nd.
Yeah, and we talk about it on the podcast, Nicole, when, you know, we've talked about it probably at EquiRatings for a year now or maybe more, but FOD, finish on dressage, is by far the biggest indicator of success that we can find in the sport.
And just how big a performance then is that from Laura? London 52, only a 9-year-old. You know, you've talked about him for a little while as an up-and-coming superstar. Laura, I know, thinks a huge amount of him. He's delivered. You know, he's never completed a 3-star before this weekend. He comes here in a seriously strong field and absolutely nails all 3 phases, with more to come in the future.
Think of the form and confidence that she must have at the moment. Janelle Price is rightly getting a lot of plaudits for the consecutive 4-star victories. But if you look at, and you talk about FODs, if you look at what Laura has done in the last couple of weeks with Mr. Bass at Le Moulin, and now London 52, who shares a lot of the same owners as Mr. Bass, delivering here very close to the FOD. I think we were right to get excited. It was Mr. Bass's first 4-star. That was London 52's first 3-star cross country. You know, I think we're right to get excited.
Well, there is a lot to look forward to, and Laura has actually said that she thinks she might aim him at Jardy as well. She is now the series leader as well, 52 points on the board. That is 2 very strong counting scores to her record. I think we're going to see her every single leg now before the end of the season in a bid to try and take that. And actually, Chris Burton, in 2nd on the series leaderboard, only 3 points behind Laura. So the series itself is hotting up. And Bill Levitt. Can we talk about Bill Levitt?
Let's.
Because any of you who've watched the Event Rider Masters will have seen Bill Levitt and Shenandoah Titan on so many occasions before. This was their 14th appearance in the series as a combination from something like 16 available runs. And it finally happened. They got every single phase right and they finished on the podium. Bill was delighted. We were delighted for him. I think a lot of people were delighted. I mean, it is just brilliant to see it all come together, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very exciting. We talk about fan favourites with the horses. Like, Bill has been we've travelled a lot with the Event Rider Masters, and you end up in places. So, I mean, there's lots of people here in Arville, but there was times when we were at events when we didn't have as many familiar faces. And suddenly you turn around and Bill is there yet again.
But he's so enthusiastic about the series, and he was so enthusiastic.
But he's put in a lot of work into the Event Rider Masters, and he's actually come close on a number of occasions. Shenandoah Titan, most experienced CIC 3-star horse in the field, 26, that's now 27 CIC 3-star runs. They just hadn't had an event that they put all 3 phases together.
They'd been close, so I think in Wiesbaden last year they were 5th. Blair, they were very close. Blenheim of last year, they were 6th, I think, in the end. So they've been really close. They've had a number of top 10s, but it just hadn't quite come together. But actually, it puts him in the series hunt as well, because he's got 44 points on the board.
And he will keep going and going and going.
He will. He absolutely will. So they were our top 3, but let's just for a moment talk about a few of the shocks of the weekend, because we've had a couple of them. Thomas Carlyle, Upsilon, delighted when they led the dressage yesterday afternoon, put in a really polished performance, 23.3. But drama in the show jumping, the second fence went, and they had a rather spectacular crash through the third as well.
That was, serious drama, wasn't it? I mean, you remember the drama at Chatsworth?
When he refused in the show jumping back in the start of 2017.
That gave Gemma the opportunity to go ahead of him, and even at that point, because he went clear and inside the time cross country, he was able to pull himself back up. I still thought there was potential that he could do that today, but I guess what we're seeing, Nicole, is, I had a chat with Tom just after the show jumping, and he said it's a challenge because he's just got Upsilon at the moment. He's trying to turn up at this event for Upsilon, but he's bringing through a lot of younger horses at the moment, so he's not constantly competing at 3 and 4 star. He doesn't have a big 3 and 4 star string. So it's a different challenge. He'll be massively disappointed going home this evening, but
because it wasn't just the show jumping that was a disappointment. He had disappointment out on the cross country as well, and unfortunately, he was still in with a chance of the top 10 finish, but didn't go to plan out on the cross country. Rüdiger Schwartz's track really was influential on the leaderboard, but the other one, you put them up as the winners this weekend, and actually they were the hot favourites coming in here. Everybody thought their recent form, they've been on absolute fire. Oliver Town and Kilnabrad and Evo in second after show jumping, went out on the cross country as the second last to go. Didn't work for them. It was an influential track, but that was a big shock, big surprise.
It was a big surprise because he's been in good jumping form of late, but he has had cross-country jumping problems before. I really felt the clear show jumping round had given them the platform. They always do a very good dressage tests. I wondered if the hills would potentially might give them a problem on time. It didn't turn out to be the case. It was a jumping problem in the end and they retired. Yeah, he'll be disappointed, but Oliver will be back.
Who else caught your eye this weekend? I think for me, and I know I talked about him a lot before the weekend started, Balmoral Sensation, Clark Johnston, we don't get to see them a huge amount on this side of the world. So it was a real privilege to be able to enjoy them. And actually, they've had a good top 10 finish. I think they finished in 7th place. So they put in a strong performance in all 3 phases, and I would have thought that would be good enough to be still catching the eyes of the WEG selectors ahead of Tryon.
Yeah, they'll definitely be catching their eyes. But this is the short format of the sport. This is all about the speed. It's all, the real 2 phases being tested here, I expect, would have been the dressage and the show jumping, because that's where the pressure is. Balmoral Sensation, we talked about it on the podcast, harder for him to make the time at a shorter format, but come the test that we're going to have in Tryon at the World Championships, I think Balmoral Sensation will be certainly in with a very good shout of joining a very competitive Kiwi team. The one for me, Nicole, that I just love and so happy to see her back, Borough Pennies. What a round that was. I mean, a little bit of controversy. If we're talking about action and controversy moments, that was one.
So originally, she was eliminated. So out on the course, right at the end of the cross country, she jumped an additional obstacle. So immediately after the live scoring showed her as eliminated, when she would have gone into the lead, she was only 1 second over the time. Would have made the time if she hadn't jumped the extra obstacle. Obviously, the ground jury reviewed what she'd jumped, how she'd jumped to everything else, and she was reinstated into the competition, ended up finishing 5th. And actually, she had been very, very good in all 3 phases and deserved that 5th place.
I thought the cross country was what did it for me. They're always so impressive in the show jumping. They're so high, like Sealer Lan high over every fence, And I thought, when I saw them, I wondered about the time cross-country because of the height that they get everywhere and knowing that the time was that influential, but actually serious round, nippier than I expected. Maybe I'm wrong, I just didn't think that they were going to be as fast as they were. But anyway, I thought it was brilliant. I love that horse. So imposing as well.
I think before we wrap, we probably ought to say nobody before this weekend had ever made the time here on the cross country in the 3-star in Arville. 2 people did it this weekend in a field of that quality. It is a tough, tough ask still.
Yeah, very tough ask. Actually, the stats played out almost very similarly to what we'd seen in the previous 5 times in Arville, other than, I suppose, some faster rounds. So Chris and Sarah Cohn, Treason, made the time. But you're back to that 50% jumping clear rate at Arville. And normally when you see a very difficult time, you will see a much higher clear rate. Chatsworth has a high jumping clear rate, but a very difficult time. Here we actually have a 50% jumping clear rate and still difficult to make the time. That proved to be the case even with all the talent of the Event Rider Masters. I think people have enjoyed it. It was actually, for me, I think it was one of my favourite 3 phases when you put them together. All of them were influence.
Well, it was 3 very, very good phases because there was action on the leaderboard in all 3 of them. And ultimately, the win went to Australia's Chris Burton, who's thrown himself into series contention with a 2nd place behind Laura Collett, who also finished on the podium this weekend in Arville. We can't wait to see where the series takes us next in terms of the action and the drama. We'll be heading to the St James's Place Barbary Castle International Horse Trials the 7th and the 8th of July. We've loved having the EquiRatings stats. We're looking forward to seeing a few more EquiRatings predictions as the weekend progresses or as the series progresses. This weekend's over, and what a weekend it has been. We hope you can join us at Barbary because the series itself is hotting up, and so are all of the legs.